if you use the wrong measure, you get the wrong results. There's a measure we should have been using to look at cities for a long time. It's something I call walk appeal that we actually haven't done. And it's something I like to propose that should be the centerpiece of how we actually measure urbanism. For a very long time, actually a century, the next image is about to come up here momentarily. This is what we've actually built urbanism around, the notion of the 5-minute walk or the quarter-mile radius that we say that people will walk. This, like a stopped clock that is right once every morning, this is actually right at one place in the city, okay? But it's a myth everywhere else. It actually doesn't work everywhere else. If you look at a power center, here's the quarter-mile radius. People might only walk this far at a power center because it's such a dreadful experience. This is Rome turned on its side. North is this way. Here's the quarter-mile radius. People will easily walk for 2 miles or even more. They'll just keep on walking in Rome and never think about driving because it's such a great place. There's some things that we can measure about walk appeal. And these are a list of them. There's also some others we'll talk about in a minute that we can't measure as well, but they actually come into play as well. But the point is this is not just artistry anymore. It's actually stuff that we can say, this is better than that. For example, when you change the view, for example, now in this case, they brought a garden room all the way out to the front, and so therefore when you walk by here, then what you're getting, sorry, you won't be able to get this, but as you walk by, you're changing your view every few seconds as opposed to every half minute or so if something is set way back off the street. Street enclosure is another big one. This is one of the very few places in the U.S. On 14th Street in D.C. that you actually get greater than a 1-to-1 proportion of the street. In Europe, all the great streets are at least a 1-to-1. That is, the buildings are at least as tall as the spaces between them. And so that's one measure. Another is, do you have something that actually shelters you as you walk along the street, like this awning does? And what is your window of view? If you have on a good main street, you need about 70% glass versus solid to actually be interesting enough to walk along, because then you can look in to what's inside. In urbanism, we call this a terminated vista. That sounds like something's about to get killed. I like to call it a goal in the middle distance, because it's something that, even if it's a little bit boring as you walk along here, this keeps pulling you down to the end of the street. And so you keep on going, even if there's a part of the street that has less walk appeal. How do you turn the corner? This is the main street in Alexandria. But as you can see in this case, this corner turns really well, and so this pulls people in from the surrounding neighborhoods. Now, if this were really boring, they wouldn't come in, and so you wouldn't have the amount of vitality on the street that you do in this particular case. Here's some of the immeasurables, and that is that one of the things most interesting to people is other people. Okay, and so when there's a lot of people you can't measure that, but that makes it a more interesting place. Also, in a great place, there's a magic about it, because you feel like that you can turn the corner and find something you weren't expecting. You'll never do that in sprawl. Okay, so here's the way that I'm actually setting this out. I'm calling this the London standard, but it could be the Rome standard, the Paris standard, or whatever. But it's those great places in the great cities where you will walk easily 2 miles without even thinking about getting in the car and driving. I mean, you just don't even consider it if you're in a place like that. Now, on a good American main street, you will easily walk 3/4 of a mile without driving. You don't even consider that. The Australians talk about an elongated ped shed along a main street. Well, this explains why. Because it's simply more interesting than walking on a street that actually has less interest. Now, this is the one place that the quarter mile actually works, and that is on a good neighborhood street with the porches and maybe hedges and fences and that kind of thing, and the sidewalks. This is a place that people will walk the quarter mile. That's that clock, the stop clock that's right once a morning and once in an evening. That's where that standard actually works. Now here, when you get to the suburban standard, this is a place where the houses are further back. There's less enclosure. Here people will walk about 1/10 of a mile. And so it is simply less interesting because you pass less stuff for every step that you take. And so it simply is not entertaining you as much. Now, in a regular subdivision standard, like this, where things are even further back and there's nothing out at the frontage, then you're doing good to walk 250 feet, which explains why people in a typical subdivision don't know that many people around them. They're not neighbors with them, they're cohabitators of the same subdivision, that's all, okay? Because of the fact it's not interesting enough. Now here's this power center that I talked about before. Now here, you will literally wait for a minute for somebody to pull out of a parking space, not because you're so lazy, but because it's such a dreadful walking experience that you don't want to go down 3 spaces further to park. It's not your fault. It's the environment's fault that you don't want to walk any further than that. Now, the worst possible situation is one, and y'all have some around here, where you have parking on this side, an arterial on this side. I say 25 feet. In reality, nobody will ever walk there unless the car breaks down. Okay, I mean, they just don't, you know. So this is the worst possible situation that you could have. That totally kills walkability. This is St. Charles, Missouri. This is their current setting. And I've gone through here and I said, okay, from this imaginary store, here's where people will walk from to that store. Well, it's not imaginary, it's a real store. But anyway, I just picked a random store on the main street. And so that's where they'll walk from. Now, if you just fix the problems, you know, all the places that the parking is killing, here's how much further out you can reach in the community to gather customers. Okay, now watch this. If you can actually turn it up one notch and move everything up one level from where it currently is to what it could be, then what you'll see in a moment is here's how much further out that you can reach into the community to get customers for those stores. So walk appeal is the #1 predictor of the success or failure of a business in a walkable place. Thank you.